Happy Sunday, everybody. You are watching Sunday Live with Caleb, where we bring you artists and musicians every week into your home via streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. If you would like to ask our guest of the week a question, you can post it right up here. Just say hello, say post your question. If you just want to say hello to other people watching the show, you can do that too. We have had some interesting technical difficulties this last week. I recently upgraded the software that puts all these pieces together, and it appears like it's got some bugs. So I have a nice little list sitting over here of what to do to work around the new bugs. And the good news is they fixed the old bugs. If you'd like to hear more about my rants about software and software problems, you can check out Software Sucks. It is a page on Facebook, and that's where I rant so that the wife doesn't have to hear it. So without further ado, I'd like to bring on Joe Price. Hey, hello. Joe, how you doing?
Quite well, thank you. Quite well.
How's everything in Berkeley?
Pretty good. I slept through a glorious day. It was a beautiful morning. What little I saw of it, I climbed out of bed at 1:30 in the afternoon, and just awake in time to be here.
Cool.
And had I known there's going to be technical difficulty, I could have slept in later.
For those tuning back in, we greatly appreciate you sticking with us. We started the show about 5 o'clock. And then found out about 15 minutes in the way that none of the guest audio was playing out to the world. I could hear them perfectly fine, but it wasn't showing up on Facebook. So we had to do a little scramble and rebooting, and we are back and reshooting this episode. And later on, if you watch this episode edited, you'll never know that previous one ever happened, and you'll wonder, what happened? What was in that episode? What did I miss? And you'll never find out. Well, this week's guest is Leon Rosen, singer, songwriter, artist. And I got hooked up with Leon to be on the show through Stefan Aronson, who's been on earlier episodes and who I've worked closely with Balanced Breakfast. And if you are new to the show, you should check out Balanced Breakfast. It's a great music artist community. And we are meeting online every couple weeks to just stay sane and stay connected. And Liam's a part of the Balanced Breakfast community, and I've asked him to be on the show today. But after that, it's funny, when you go back to do a retake, you start overthinking everything, and you really start stumbling over your words even more than you previously had. For longtime viewers of the show, you'll know that this is it's an interesting production that every week we have some new challenge with. Oh, goodness gracious. I'm going to have to edit these two clips together. So I'm going back to Joe. Hey, Joe. I'm not even getting through the guest screen, and I'm stumbling over my speech.
Hello.
Hello. I think what's going to just have to happen is I'm going to have to make time to download these videos and edit them and repost them, edited versions on YouTube. You realize how much having a crew of 20 to 100 people around you handling cameras and the audio and all the technical problems. But when you're one person doing the Swiss Army knife thing, it seems you become all that more appreciative of the things you don't see on, say, broadcast TV. All right, the guest of the week, Leon Rosen, singer, songwriter, artist. Take 52. Hey, I think we should just keep doing this take thing and showing people how it's really done and how good the earlier episodes were before this one. This week's guest is singer, songwriter, artist Leon Rosen. And I want to show you a clip of him in the studio. Then we're going to bring Leon on. Today we're going to show some of his music videos and have live performances.
I got a song to sing, gracefully and stupid. I've lived a life
Very nice. David, nice work. Oh.
And I will fall.
That was Leon Rosen live in the studio working on a track. Hey, Leon, how the heck are you doing?
Great to see you. Good to be
Good
here.
to-
Doing all right. Doing all right
Good to
today.
see you. Now, I really want to find out, are you an introvert or an extrovert?
It's an interesting question. One I've given a lot of thought over the years. I always thought I was an extrovert, and I'll tell you why. Because I never wanted to be alone, and I always wanted to spend all my time with everybody else. Right? So I would just like never get an apartment by myself. Forget about the fact that I couldn't afford it. There was no situation where I would even entertain such an idea. At a certain point, I got to a place where I had been traveling a lot and I just wanted some space. So I took myself a little caravan on a hill in a like very beautiful, fairly rural environment. And I loved it. And it was a trip. And it radically changed me. Or it got me over this fear of silence. And that opened up a world of beautiful introversion that I was able to dive into for the first time ever. However, I feel like I'm never happy if I just live in that world. I'm sort of a yin yang, sort of a half extrovert, half introvert. I haven't been able to figure out which one it is, but it does seem like the introverted side tends to be the stronger one. But there is a reason for that, is that as an artist and as a performer, I want to impress. I want to nail it. I'd be like, wow, that was an amazing show. We loved it. So when I don't feel like that, there's that shame aspect, which might intrude on the extroversion. Where is the energy that I get from being extroverted only contingent on positive affirmation? Or is it really about connecting with people? So that's a question. I think it's the former, which I'm not thrilled about. But it is a question. That's what it is.
I like to think of introversion, extroversion as how do you recharge? Do you recharge by being on stage or do you recharge at home? And I can be appear very extroverted if I'm teaching or training or performing music. But man, I've got to recharge at home. I've got to have that solo time. Not even my wife, like, okay, honey, your night is the night to go fall asleep on the couch and watch TV, because I just need to be alone with myself and watching YouTube and fall asleep. And I have to give myself that recharge.
I love what you're saying, especially about like the solo time on the couch. I feel like what I'll do is I'll wake up. I don't like waking up early, but I've gotten so acclimated to it, and I always love staying up late. But that's sort of the solo time. Is like when everybody's gone, Nicole's gone to sleep, and early in the morning before anybody wakes up. Well, it's just me and Nicole, so she's anybody, and everybody. So that's the time I just sit there, dawdle, sit on my phone, do nothing, waste time, and it feels good. Get that recharge, and then back at it.
Then I'm gonna say, based on my definition, you are an introvert.
No doubt.
Welcome
No
to the
doubt.
team. I'd like to say that this is the time of introverts because while we're all in lockdown and I'm like, okay, I'm in lockdown. Here's all the projects I'm going to do and get to and the things that I'm going to tidy up and around the house. And I'm going to, fix the closet railing. And, I've got my laundry list and my checklist. I wake up every day, write down. I'm like, yeah, I'm going. And I get messages from folks like Stefan who are like, how are you not going crazy? I'm like,
Totally.
oh, you poor
It's good.
extroverts.
Stefan does not want to spend. He loves people, so he really shares moments every second. I'll say hi to Stefan, and it's like, all right, we leave, and I walk a few paces the opposite direction and run into Stefan. That's like, it's like, he's just out.
Oh, man.
He is-
I got to tell them that on Thursday. That is a great one.
Exactly.
If you're not going to be at the balanced breakfast, I'm going to drop it, or you should drop it, because that's fantastic. I'm talking to Stefan, I walk away and I run into Stefan. I thought you were going to say you turn around and he's already spoken to 5 people.
That too.
During the festival, I set up the backdrop. We were having problems with it, and he's like, "Could you handle this?" So I set up the backdrop, and they're capturing photographs, and I'm working on that, and I rope in a few more people. We get it set up, and then I see photographs back, and while I was setting that up and getting it to work, he did a photo shoot with like 20 people. I wasn't paying attention. I was like, when was this photo shoot? Oh, when you guys were setting up. I'm like, what? Yeah, he's definitely an extrovert. And you and I were speaking earlier about how when he was stuck in New York City, he started DJing from he had DJ gear delivered to him so he could DJ and connect with people right in his friend's living room. And eventually, I think they got tired of that. So he found a bar that was open to serve drinks to go. And he was DJing inside the place with no one else there, just to be like doing it.
I feel that. Yeah, just to feel like he's in his zone. He's in his truth. I feel that.
Now with myself, we had lockdown the day after my last gig. So it was, unfortunately, it was the warm up for the big gig that was going to come after that, which is probably never going to happen at this point. And I'm glad I got that last gig in there. And for me, I'm like, okay, I'm transferring online. I'm doing, start doing this show, I'm involved with Balanced Breakfast. How has it impacted you?
Well, I was planning to do a major album recording. I haven't released a ton of stuff. I recorded a record myself with my friend Matan. He produced, and it was cool. And then I wouldn't let him finish it. I should have. Keep it pure, keep it raw, and keep it just great. I kept adding and tinkering with things until it became a bit of a overburned mess. I released it for all of maybe a few weeks, and I was like, this is terrible. And I deleted it.
Whoa.
So then I went and started doing smaller project, EP, and then singles. So I released a couple singles last year and a couple singles this year. But in July, I was going to spend the whole month of July just going with my producer Cody. We're going to just go deep. We're just going to go record the best material and whittle it down until we have the best of the best and release it as a project. Or even if we didn't release it as an album, we're going to record it as an album and produce it that way. He helped me produce my song. Well, he produced my song Then Again, Stargaze, Song to Sing, which hasn't been released yet. So since then, I've been just taking, what do I have already recorded? And what can I do to finish it? I have Cody and a few other distant studios, Jesse Nichols at Atomic Garden in Oakland. He has his own massive studio, and he's doing distance mixes. And even in some live recordings, we went and did some vocals there not long ago. So there's still stuff happening, but I guess, there is no big show. In fact, if anything, I'm happy that if I had any shows booked, that I got an excuse to get out of them. Because I love performing when it's right, when I feel like I'm on and the band loves each other. As a solo artist, I've been using like session guys, great players, outstanding musicians. But it's different when it's not a band, and I just couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't just keep paying guys to go and pretend to be the band. Couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't afford it anymore. Could never afford it, even to begin with. But I certainly felt like, okay, if I'm going to perform, it'll just be me on a keyboard, and it doesn't quite match what I do. So I've been having this little quagmire about how do I do that. So I didn't mind having the rug pulled out of under this whole question because I had no real solution in mind. So
this is opportunity for you to go back to the drawing board and rethink it and take all those experiences and approach your project differently.
Intentionally, yeah. I think something that's always been challenging for me is, what I think makes a good performer, is, and on piano, I can do this. If I did a solo piano gig, I could channel, I could emote, I could be me in the most tortured artist moment or most positive, joyous moment and share that experience in real time. People could look and it wouldn't change the vibe. But when I'm singing or when I'm doing my songs, it's not like that. I care about every detail of how it is and how it comes across. So I think that makes it a little difficult for me to just like be like, you know, Stefan is in league with a lot of great performers in the Bay Area in LA and beyond. Colombia, spent a lot of time in Colombia. And these are people who just have a desire to be out there, and they don't always sound, they could sound terrible, but they need it, right? So I don't feel like I'm ready to give up on it. I have to find it. That's the quest, how to do it in an authentic way.
Well, one of your earlier songs has a music video that really, I think, captures that feeling of still being connected to a greater whole and yet introverted. I want to play a video called Grieving Friend of a Superman.
All right, let's do
And
it.
then when we come back, we'll talk about the project.
Choice you made, you can never hide. It's in your eyes. And you know our choices are written on the wall. And you know our voices are fading like it all. And you know our troubles are written on the Take me up now and let me live. You're the one trying to teach me to give, as a grieving friend of a saving man. And let me live. You're the one hiding secrets from me. Well, I'm the Superman to your Superman. And you know our faces are written on the wall. Choices are fading like it all. And you know our troubles are written on the Oh, you know this future's coming through. Can I come and roll with you? Roll with you. Oh no, you know you turned your back on me. Can you fly away to sea, away from here? And you know our faces are written on the wall. And you know our choices fading like it all. And you know our troubles are written on the
That was Grieving Friend of a Superman by Leon Rosen. So I'm a huge fan of science fiction and grew up on stuff like 2001, Space 1999, which was somewhat based on 2001 in tone. And there was a East German film called Ilomia that I used as the music video for my song Caravan of the Soul. That last sequence just looked like it was right out of. How did that video come about?
So I think a big part of it, the video was directed by Jaffe Riddle. Jaffe is a wonderful musician himself, composer, multi-instrumentalist. He's also a great filmmaker. He just started making his own videos for his music, and people started asking him to make stuff for them too. And he became really in demand. He just did a Tune Yards video. One of my other favorite bands, he did her video, New Spell. He and I and New Spell went down to LA. We all got in this film festival for both of our videos, which he directed. So I explained to him the vision I had for the song in terms of visual stimuli that related to why I wrote it. I'll tell you what, I've always had trouble deciding if I should tell people what the song's really about, because I want people to have ownership. And by the time I edit songs and edit lyrics down, they have nothing to do with whatever they originally were, because I want them to be accessible.
I know
I
that
want people
one.
to find their own narrative. But it was based on being a Smallville addict. I love this TV show called Smallville. And it was about young Superman, Clark Kent, before he was Clark Kent. And it was a pretty cheesy show. I understand that. I get it. But I loved it. And there was a scene where, I guess there's no way to tell the story without giving a bunch of spoilers. But rest assured, nothing in that show is permanent. So this is one episode, basically. But basically, Green Arrow kills Lex Luthor. Very serious moment, culmination of decades of the show. And like everything in the show, nothing's permanent. But it was a very emotional moment. They played this tune by The Killers called Good Night, Travel Well. I was like, oh man, I love the vibe on that. I want to try to write a song like that. And I like this one line from the song called The Unknown Distance to the great beyond stares back at my grieving friend. And so I was like, grieving friend. So I wrote this grieving friend song. I was like, I'll kind of base it off of that. I just couldn't get it to sound like the Killers thing at all. And I kept tinkering with it. And then I realized, I read the lyrics. It's not grieving friend. It's grieving frame, some other whole thing. I was like, cool, this is a song. I actually wrote a song. It's not their song. And it was all about this dichotomy between these best friends that one was like torn between wanting to be great, wanting to be righteous, but just loving the desire and selfishness and greed. And finding that balance was like what made the show great. Michael Rosenbaum was the actor. So I told this all to Jaffe, the director. And he spun it around in his head and came up with this video. Now, if you looked at the two back to back, it's like, what? And yet that's what I love about the way that his mind works. He's the type of an artist to find the kernel that relates to what he's about and what you're about. And together you're able to create a constant channel where the representations are all different, but some of the attributes are the same. We talked about environmentalism. We talked about, what would it be like if we continue in the path that we're on? It does seem like that's the path we're on. I mean, it does. But
Right.
I'm hoping that we turn it around, and I'm sure we'll probably pull an 11th hour save and not end up the grieving friend who's out in outer space in his little ship recreating and reliving these experiences. But that's basically how it came to be. Although I had little to do with it from the beginning till the end. We met at Muddy Waters Cafe, San Francisco, Valencia Street. Had a long hangout, talked it all through. And then he came with a rough draft and said, I need you to act your parts, and I'm going to basically turn you into a stop motion animation guy. And then he did that. It was a really fun day in his apartment in Oakland, which, by the way,
So he had
He did the
already
whole-
plotted out where he was going to put your face. I mean,
Yeah,
how do
he
you
had
do that?
everything. He would have me. He was like, "You're going to be walking through this way, so I need you to walk, in this way, and the camera will be at this angle." So he plotted a lot out. I mean, it was very detailed shot list. It was pretty fun to work in that environment. I've always wanted to act. I've always wanted to get deeper into that. I'm not an actor. I think acting is a real craft. I love to do it, but I think it's a bit demanding. It's probably the most demanding of all the arts, from ourselves personally. So I'm not at the level yet.
You don't have
But it was
any
really fun to do it, or just on a
distancing
facial
you can
expression.
do. Is it with acting? It's immediate, right? And it's physical. Folks like you and I that like working in the studio and crafting things and tweaking this and changing.
Exactly.
When you're acting, especially if you're acting live, what you do is what you do.
Exactly. You Are Not a Gadget is one of the books I have. It's like I've never read the book. There it is on my shelf, but I like the title. You Are Not a Gadget. That taught me.
I've got a couple
Cool.
of
Just
those.
the title. I get it. And then somebody who's not a gadget, they can like actually do it and go act. Meanwhile, I'll be mess with gadgets and try to make sounds out of them. I'm actually not a good engineer. I'm a terrible engineer. I always rely heavily on the engineers around me. I just sort of like interface and we collaborate and things are created start to finish.
Well, here today you have complete and utter control of your environment, and you said that you would like to perform live. I think we should show some folks a live track. What do you have?
Alright.
What's the name of this track you got for us?
I'm going to do a song that's half created. I wrote this song. I took a course by this guy, Bo Williams, on creating songs that could be behind movies and things like that. So did I really internalize any of that information? Maybe, maybe not. Is this song good for that? Probably not. Not sure. But the song came out of it, and it's more of it's a sort of wispy sequence of musical events with some lyrics. And it's a song, and I'm going to play it. It's called Don't Find Me. Don't find me. Don't wait for me. Don't look for me. 'Cause I'm haunted. And I'm haunted. And I'm all around your love. But don't find me. Don't wait for me. Don't look for me. And I'll spend the night. I'll roll down fine. I'll come out right if you walk away. Don't find me. Don't wait for me. Don't look for me. I'll turn out right if you just look the other way. Well, I'll turn out right if you walk away. Don't find me. Don't look for me. Don't wait for me. 'Cause I'm haunted. I'm haunted. I'm haunted.
Thank you for that, Leon. Did you say the title at the beginning?
That's called Don't Find Me.
Okay.
And it's still a bit of a work in progress. I want to have a sense of things cascade and layer and build rather than have clear sections, like a verse and a chorus and a pre-chorus and a bridge and all that. I still want to keep it from getting boring. I feel like it needs a little more melodic, something exotic has to happen. It's something that takes us somewhere. And I want to fine tune the lyric too. It needs a little more message. But I'm usually the most comfortable performing works in progress. It's a weird idiosyncrasy of my performing. I'm often terribly nervous about anything that I know really well. Even though earlier I told you if we're all really rehearsed, I do well. That's for the comfort level where I don't think I'm going to mess anything up. But on the level of expression, if it's unformed and still yet to be, I feel like it's an opportunity to be honest. And if it's terrible, it's what it is, and that's okay.
I think this comes back to the perfectionism we were talking about earlier and the control. Once you have this perfect piece done, it's no longer, there's a pressure there to reproduce it perfectly. And if here you're like, this is a work in progress, that pressure now comes down because the expectation in your own head is, my finger might fumble. And I like to say, it's never a mistake as long as you repeat it.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And you do this, you playing, I'm diddling on guitar a little, and I hit a note, and I go, okay, my job, if I do this live, my job is now to hit that a second time.
Exactly.
So the first time is no longer a mistake.
Exactly. It is true. If I look back, I'm listening to what you're saying, and I'm just using it, and now I'm like walking back in songs that I'm really happy about the recording. I never perform them again. I'm not saying never, but they're not go-to songs. They're not like, Grieving Friend is an exception because I played it live for so long before I finally recorded it. Probably a couple of years. I don't know how long, but I wrote it, and at a certain point I started playing it all the time. And I can still just play that and feel good about it, feel real about it. But my most recent tunes, pretty tricky. Then Again song, which came out last month. I had it in the can for almost a year before I released it. Another song called Stargaze, both really cool, but I like how they came out so well that I just can't seem to find it in me to actually try to go there, or because when I perform, it's always different. It's always different. So when something's really great that one way, I almost feel like, well, that's not for me. That's like for somebody can do a cover of that and they can perform it or something like that.
I guess I don't have that same level of pressure because live I tend not to play an instrument. The idea of trying to play a musical instrument and trying to sing, and my focus on live performance is to sing the words and the notes at the right moment. And that's entirely my job. And so I use backing tracks, or I have other musicians around me who will perform certain parts. Almost always there's some backing track that we're playing to. If it's a drum part, very, very few times I've actually worked with a live drummer. I've done it only a couple times. And in my mind, my panic is, am I going to remember the lyrics? And am I going to come in at the right moment in the song? And I'm going to hit the right note? Am I going to have good articulation so that there's an emotional connection? That's like where my whole head is at the whole time.
That's right. Yeah, I do forget my lyrics fairly frequently. In fact, I have one friend who, weirdly, I guess not weirdly, until recently, I didn't have much of a following, but in the last couple of years, it started to manifest. Although that has a lot to do with just releasing music finally in the last couple of years. That
Funny thing,
it.
I wasn't building a fan base for my released music. Why? Well, I hadn't released any, actually.
I had this one friend, Shimshon, and Shimshon always was a supporter. We have a funny relationship. We just clown each other constantly, but he's been a supporter of my music. And he knows the lyrics. And at a show, he'll come and he'll be like, what was that? Those aren't the lyrics of the song. What was that? You don't know your own song, do you?
Because most shows, people they're feeling the vibe, they're feeling the beat, they're about their own thing. You're entertaining them, and soundtrack to their party, and they're not paying attention. If I think about this, I'm like worried about my interest. I'm like, if I'm doing a cover tune, okay, but for everything else, nobody there knows.
No, exactly.
So he busts you on it.
Yeah, no, he does every time. Yeah. If I do a live stream too. If I do a song that he knows tonight, he'll be like, "Yeah, you don't know your songs. You need to practice." I almost feel, when you write it, it's done, and then write another. I love the process of writing the songs. I have a catalog of 1 million ballads. I have learned that people like ballads, but there's a limit. There's a limit to people's willingness to have another ballad. Oh, nice, Leon. Another ballad came out. Very nice.
Well, I'm going to play Willows next. Is Willows a ballad?
What's that?
Is Willows a ballad since I'm playing it next?
Willow, all my songs are ballad tempo, but a lot of them are energetic. So Willows doesn't stay a ballad for long. But it is sort of.
Well, we're going to play Willows, and we'll come back and talk about that and the time that you broke out of your ballad mode.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3. On a night and see and that was just a dream that I'd seen me and know that I want to believe something. I sang upon a willow, I cried against my just old me in my willow tree. I could not be really sure of this. I know of this. My place is found and know of this I'm sure, and know that it could really mean something to someone else. I know I'm not back home, of this I'm sure. I came upon a willow and I cried against my pillow. Well, that was just a dream. Well, that was just a
Another video I love and song I love. And I can hear in you talking about the songs and production that you seem to suffer from some of the things I do, which is that I can't see the final work because my passion really is in the creative process, writing the lyrics, writing the song, going through the process. Probably about halfway through the recording process, I'm tapped out. I have almost no interest in that song anymore. And it's like, oh, okay, baby's been born. It's kind of getting to about 10 years old, and I'm kind of like, all right, kid, move along. And I'm on to, focusing on my next creation. By the time you get to a music video like this, where it's all been produced and and then you get to video editing, you have been exposed to that song potentially for years to get to that point. So I totally hear you where you're like, I just move on to playing some more tunes and more ideas and things I want to create versus sort of chewing on something that already has its independent life.
Exactly.
But that means you're not a good judge of the result of your work.
That is true. That part is true.
And you know what? That's okay.
It wasn't so that one, I guess, that one was shot and edited by Elliot Vargas and his assistant. And then Elliot and I have continued to do other stuff since then. And it was all done live, and it was recorded to tape. So trying to sync tape to video was challenging on its own. But we did it. Somehow we did. We made it work. Elliot did great editing, but I wasn't sitting there editing it. I didn't mix it, and I didn't edit it. Rob Shelton recorded it. We all planned to be there in the studio. We got a track. We got those smooth camera movements. Actually got a track for it. And it was great. It was a cool experience. I guess the reason I'm not willing to ever watch that video, I mean, I do like it. I tend to like to fade back in my own material in terms of emphasize the other people in the group, or make an avatar of myself, or just like have it be an animated video. So I'm like right there in this video, and I'm just like judging my look. I'm judging this. Oh, I can see what I did on the piano. I missed that note there. I am a little overkill with the judgment, but hey, it's all right. That goes with being a crazy artist. That's part of the torment, is like, oh, man, that book, how dare he exist?
What are you talking about? We don't torment ourselves. No. And I totally relate. All the little things in the videos that no one else is hearing or seeing, we see. There was a song recently I was working with my producer, and I said, oh, right here, there's a little ding, ding. And he's like, what? I said, yeah, it needs a little ding, ding right there. And he's like, dude, no one but you will ever notice that. Exactly. Oh, no, trust me. And sometimes it makes a difference, and sometimes it doesn't. I like to say,
about that. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, again, I have this analogy of like kids. You raise children to a certain point, and then they get independent, and they go off and have a life of their own, and go to college and stop talking to you for a little while because they're busy. It's like the whole dynamic changes when you put a song out, and then you have, say, video artists working on that material and reinterpreting it and doing something else with it. And it took me a long, long time to be able to listen to my own stuff. It took me a good year after the song was finished and out before I could actually hear the song for what it was versus what was in my thoughts or head.
It was interesting because we had spoken before this interview, and you were like, hey, I want to play this song. Like, no, you can't do that. And then I realized, if I ever watched it from the beginning to the end, if I ever made it to the end of my own video, not just like turned it on, and I don't think I ever have. So I watched it, and actually it was all right. I was like, actually, this is actually pretty good. I don't know why I
it's
thought it was
good.
like absolutely terrible. And then when I was watching it the other day, I was like, truth be told, I mean, that band also is just stellar. We really gelled. It was a really great moment for me musically when that was the group I was playing with in a lot of recordings. So you'll hear a lot of them in upcoming releases. Stuff we recorded so much stuff, so I just have stuff to release forever. Thank goodness now it's COVID. The stuff we could just mix it and send it out.
Nice.
Geneva Harrison would either play drums or a vibraphone and marimba. In the video, she plays both. She has two towering, like her station is super dope, and she's just doing it all. And then in that particular song, Jason Slota, who played on Grieving Friend of a Superman, the drummer, and Doug Stewart, who played on Grieving Friend of a Superman, the bass player, and then me on the actual piano. I love keyboards when they're like synths, but when it comes to a piano sound, nothing beats a grand. I mean, play a grand piano, all worries are away. If your voice is wavering, the overtones will find it and catch it and soothe it. And so that was actually a pretty special recording. I didn't realize it at the time, but yeah, a couple of days ago when I was listening, I was like, is this all right? And I was like, actually, this is great. A lot of little cool things the band did live. You really can't recreate those.
I appreciate you being willing to go on that journey with me. It was that moment of with the show. Typically, everybody's so busy that I'd say about 80% of the guests are just like, "I'll show up. You're figuring it out. I'll show up. I don't got time to deal with that." And then at the 11th hour, like 5 minutes before the show, they'll like want to rearrange the whole program. Like, dude, it's locked in. And every single time by the end of the show, everybody's like, "Oh, it's not a problem. Oh, it's good." So I've started learning kind of engaging different people along this process to just go on that journey. And I could see that you were wrestling with two things, which is, here's someone that wants to put this stuff out, and I want to have this control over what's in the show, but it's kind of like his show. So, and I don't really know what his show is, so I can't control it because it's in this mysterious black box. And I was like, we're on the bus, we're going, we're gonna roll down there, and some things I'm gonna be able to, accommodate the guest, and some things the guest is just going to have to roll with it and see what comes out of it. So I thank you for being willing to go on that journey, because I know that's not easy.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I think about like ethics, morals, and then there's something better, to me, better. I don't necessarily, I feel like in many ways, in most ways, I'm a good person, but I don't base it on a set of ethics. It's more just being down. And I think this is like the best phrase to come out of my generation is the word being down. Although we didn't make it up. It's been around every decade. People say.
I was going to say, you and I are a different generation, because when you're being down, man, that's depression. For me. What is it for your generation?
Being down is, what are the facts on the ground, the subtle facts? Mm-hmm. And how to be present to that realer conversation, whether it's in, you can hit them over the head, or you can see what's really being said. This comes back to that concept of honesty. When I was, 15, I'm like, wanted to say all the most honest things, and anybody who didn't say the most honest things was a bum, and they were going to get it from me in words. And it took some time to just see life in action and realize that there's honesty in words, which I still like. And then there's honesty about what's really happening right now, and having the courage to even not address it, but be in it. So when you were saying that, I was like, what's the way to be down here? What's really going on? It's like, come on. He's saying, like, go give a little. Let's do this thing. Let's put these things out and see how it crumbles, because this is how my show is going to roll. And it was clear that this is what we should do.
Cool. Well, I think we should do another live song.
All right. I guess that means I should decide what I play. I came with a plan of what to play. I did think, I should play one release song. There's that ethic, that should voice. But actually, I almost feel like, and the only reason I wouldn't play it is if I totally forget the words, in which case I'll make up a second section, and that's what'll happen. This song is called Summer's Edge. Came out last year. And playing with the idea of summer sweetness, summer camp, summer love, summer lakes, and the devastating final summer of climate change. Now the summer's edge is bright, and there is no time for us all. There's no time here for us all. And the summer's edge is bright, and there is no time for us all. There's no room here for us all. Thoughts of my own yesterdays make me say that far be it from me to blow out the candles of your dream, the smoke of your needs, and that which you seem to see. And the summer's edge is here, and there is no time for us all, as the sun becomes the fall. Thoughts of my own yesterdays make me say that far be it from me to blow out the candles of your dreams, the smoke of your needs, and that which you seem to see. The summer's edge is here, and there is no way to stand tall, as the sun becomes fall.
Thank you for that. I love the passion and the calm. You have this. I think I may have titled this episode "Calm Intensity." In the list of guests, it's like calm intensity with so and so. I keep adding these little phrases in the invite event, and you really capture that. And something that you might want to think about is that during this episode, if you're doing something new and you're trying something and you stumble and you recover, that's a human journey that everybody can relate to. And everybody listening to the show can go out and buy your album or your single in your final perfected form. But how often do they get to see you in the midst of the creative process?
Yeah.
And so that becomes something special. And this is something I'm wrestling with too, where I'm like, well, do I really can I do an episode of this show with me performing? I did one. And, do I have this practice? And I start down this laundry list of reasons. And as I'm listening to you playing today, I'm like, oh, yeah, just do it. It's tough for us control freaks.
It is. It certainly is.
Well, I want to have the next segment is what we call Mystic Moment. It's where I sort of speak my weekly perspective of how this episode fits in with life and turn this whole episode and everything we've been saying back on the viewer. This week's Mystic Moment is Engaged Strangers. I was talking earlier with Leon about how we'd never met. He knows a guy I know, and when I put feelers out for the next batch of people to be on the show, his name came up, and about 15 different people, maybe 20, and I threw out invites. Hey, do you want to be on the show? Some people respond, some people don't respond. Some people say, I'd love to, but I have this challenge, or, hey, can I be on Tuesdays? No, we plan Sunday. It's a whole different set of responses you get when you throw that out to people, especially if they don't know you and you don't know them. And if anything I've learned from this show is every time you do that, you get something back that enriches you. You get something back that's new, something that's exciting, something you get to share with another person who otherwise you wouldn't have shared. So while your parents told you not to talk to strangers, I'm going to flip it on the head and say, you're an adult now. You're perfectly capable of determining if someone's dangerous or not. Trust your gut, but also be willing to engage people and go through that initial process of finding out, hey, is this a connection just waiting in the wings? Because it'll enrich your life. You've been watching Sunday Live with myself, Caleb, and our guest, Leon Rosen. We are wrapping up the main part of the show, but we have more for you in the after party. Welcome to After Party, where we dig deeper with our guest, Leon Rosen. So, Leon, we're now in After Party, so we can, I say it's when you unbutton your shirt, you relax, we become more casual. Sometimes we just...
Great. Look at that.
You got the leg up. I would let my hair down, but it seems I'm losing it lately. Getting the ball inside. For those that know me for a long time, I had hair down to the middle of my back all through the 90s. So I still sometimes, I want to stick my head out the window of the car and feel the wind blow through the hair that once was there. Like I'll have like that syndrome where people have like a limb removed, but they can still feel it.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. I sometimes experience this with my hair, and I had a thick puff on top for a long, long time, but it is now giving up the ghost lately. But I have this phantom hair experience every now and then.
Oh, no doubt. I feel you.
I am going to show one more video in this segment, which was the Swing With Me video. So just so you have a heads up. It's an older video. This, like 6 years ago? And it uses footage from a very famous early film as its music video. So I'm sure we're going to get some sort of copyright ding, but whatever. You don't mind your royalties from this episode going to some French... Yeah, it might be...
It's public domain for sure.
It's public domain?
I looked it up when I first did it. Yeah,
okay, awesome.
Too good. Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. And that means if any of the songs you did today are released, then you'll get the royalties if YouTube puts an ad on this, which is exactly what I want. So I thought I'd ask that question first before playing it. So how long have you been at this? I mean, what's your background? We know who you are today.
Plead the fifth on that particular question.
Oh. Well,
don't want to show people just how many failures it took to.
Oh, goodness gracious! I started in 4th grade, and I've been failing ever since.
Exactly. Actually, that's interesting. 4th grade, 5th grade. Man, I think it was roughly then when I started thinking, okay, maybe I'm a piano player. But at the time, I hadn't really settled on. I think it was more like middle school by the time I was like, okay. But I wasn't like writing. I wrote one song about a girl I met in summer camp and kissed, and her name was Ariel. And it's pretty silly. I think I still remember it. Oh, oh. My voice is too low now for that. Oh, Ariel. Yeah. Oh man, I can't even
I've
keep
got one
going
of
with it.
those. I've got one of those too.
Exactly. 12-year-old crush
Yeah,
song.
it's totally like it's a inverted. Let's see, inverted C. Yeah, inverted C, F, G. I mean, it's just like right down the line, very parallel. There's no
Yeah.
contrary motion or anything. It's like dun 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 dun. And
Exactly.
I saw you the other day. I miss you went away. You know,
Exactly.
uh, uh, I do remember though the very first time I was like that I had the intention to write a song. I didn't
Yeah.
get very far in it, but I got this orange construction paper and I folded it up and I stapled it so it was like booklet. I said, this is going to be the lyric book for this song. And I drew a bird on the cover and it was called Birds. And I started writing some lyrics. I must have got distracted and that's it. And
Nice.
another unfinished piece.
Exactly. Yeah, it's interesting. You know, I have this weird thought that it's going to work, that it's going to happen, and that in the back of my mind. Now, is that an addiction to continuing to spend all my resources to make it happen? But it could be, it's a little both, I guess. But I do feel like not to worry, there's always time, it'll happen. This year, there was definitely a big bump. It wasn't like I'm not like don't have a million streams on anything, but there are now people that kind of see what I'm doing and find out what the next song is, and that's feels pretty good. Oh,
Yeah.
feels pretty cool. It's not massive, but it's definitely enough and growing. So it's like, all right, maybe it's not time to give up just yet. Keep in the game. I also can't give up because I'm hooked. I'm an addict. I just love making songs, and I love the studio, and I love releasing, and I love the ups and downs, the hope, and then, all that.
It's a journey. Every single every time you wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning and you have this lyric in a dream and you're writing it out and then halfway through the dream gets fuzzy and you don't remember the words and you're trying to call it, or every time I pick up the recorder or when I'm doing guitar practice, I'll be playing around and all of a sudden I'll start singing and I'm like, I like this song, and you reach for the recorder to hopefully capture it before it's gone. I never remember. I won't say never. I almost never remember a song that comes out my mouth. If I don't record it, it's gone.
Wow.
So I feel like it's this precious thing that when the stars align just right, I can sit here in the studio and I can play the keyboards and make music
Yeah.
all day long. But that song moment when you're creating it, for me, it's this very tenuous thing that I have to capture as soon as I can.
Yeah. A guy reached out to me on Instagram who's a producer in France. And he was like, I like your song Then Again. And I feel like my style is pretty different from yours, but maybe we could collaborate. You could like write some verses on my song. And I was like, all right, yeah, for sure. I'm game. Cause I tend to just be, when it comes to people, I am like, yes, let's try some. But I assumed it would just be some silly stuff. And then it turned out to be really good. He like clearly sought me out because he's of a similar mind creatively. He's 16. He lives in I don't know where, somewhere in France, and he made some incredible, bombastic, layered electronica beats, but they're accessible enough. But man, when I sat, I'm still working on it. I haven't found anything because when I sit down to write, there's a need. There's something that some ugliness must be turned into beauty, or some beauty has to be turned into beauty, or something has to happen, or there's a thought in my mind or a mood that has to happen. It's like birth. And so thought, on the other hand, isn't, I mean, people who know me are like, blah, 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 big talker. I always love talking, always thinking. But really, it's not where I like write from. I write from just like it has to happen now, 3 a.m, like you said. It just has to come out now. And it usually comes out fully formed if I have the stick to itiveness to not leave. If I leave and come back, maybe I can finish it, but maybe it's too incongruous. Usually I just put it all out. I make a bunch of gibberish lyrics, like where I kind of feel the vowels and the rest is gibberish. And then I later over days, I fill in the words and edit them. But yeah, I found it very difficult to write this guy's song, which I love. It's so dope. But every time I write, it's kind of like OREL. It's like pretty contrived stuff, you know.
Hey, Joe, I hear you out there. You're still hanging tight with this episode. I appreciate that. You had a question for Leon?
Yeah, it sounds like the process, the writing process. You write with the heart and edit with the head.
That's right. Wow, that's a trip. That's a trip. That is true. I have to write from the heart because otherwise I just, in my experience, whenever I try to write from, I'm like, I'm going to write a song about this. It just lays so, it's like the song, it's like, sounds like I don't know how to play the piano or sing or write a song. It just sounds really like honk, we, honk, we, honk, we. I should copyright that.
Yeah, the heart doesn't have the luxury that the head has. The heart, if you don't express the heart, it coagulates. There's like a congestive heart failure of a sort. You have to spill your heart out to continue the flux of heart. That way, the head, however, can reboot itself, and that's where the second or third draft might come from. But getting it out there in the first place, you can't sculpt. Step one, put the blob of clay on the table. Step two, then mold it, remold it as you know, ad nauseum.
You're saying it right, and the thing that's powerful about that is that what we're doing when we're editing is we're breaking the heart, and we have to. We have to break. We have to be brutal. We have to be like, hey, by the way, your heart is a piece of shit. It sucks. It's the worst ever. And we just have to like be like, ugh, and just take that feeling and not like give in. You know, we're dudes. We tend to, like in my love relationships, you know, we're not less. You know, our hearts need some conditioning. You know, we need like fall in love again, and after a while, you know, you get the hang of it. Or not. Did I get the hang of it? I don't know why I said that you get the hang of it. I don't have the hang of it.
You're just riffing.
Tell you don't have the hang of shit. Oh, I don't know what I'm supposed to say or not on the podcast.
That's okay though. That's quite all right. Also, in terms of with regard to anything resembling writer's block, if ever I get writer's block, the thing I try to do is I think about the emotion or the time or the climate of the time I'm trying to convey and the related emotion. Also try to think out who I'm trying to speak to or write with. Because for me, whenever I write anything, it's with the process of communication and that communication just reaching out to somebody at all, let alone having a message or a feeling, an essay with which to speak. Probably why I spend so much time on social media, I blush to say.
and Leon, you should check out some of Joe's stuff. I find it very strange, Joe, that you're saying that you actually write even with an audience in mind, because to me, it just occurred to me, the inherent nature of your writing for me is that you make me feel like I'm the GoPro on your helmet.
Thank you very much. That is the compliment of the week. Thank you.
Joe writes a lot about his travels around the San Francisco Bay Area, you know, 2 a.m. on a motorcycle with the moon rising over the Berkeley Hills kind of stuff. I find that he captures those things that I never write about and I don't hear other people writing about, and yet are moments that mean a lot to me emotionally. Like, okay, I'm writing back on my bicycle from my local karaoke bar at 2 a.m. and everybody's sleeping, and I come to an intersection where my path is red. There's no one around. I, brake and park and wait for the light to turn green, and then a cyclist comes the other direction and crosses the street, and they nod and I nod, and we just know. We just have a moment of that connection. And then, I'd go home and get on with life. And then you remember back at that moment and say, wow, I felt so free in that moment and so connected with another person in a certain way. And then I'll see Joe write a post and it'll be like, capture that in words that I could never write.
What you just said there is perfect. It's perfect. You have an entire night of revelry and meaningfulness and connectivity with like-minded people, with like-minded inspiration. And the final punctuation to a perfect, crowded, festive evening is you're alone with two or three other cyclists. And that lone bandwidth of connectivity on that deserted street is the perfect punctuation. At that moment, you've achieved what you set out to achieve with that entire night of revelry, which you may have achieved it, but you've underscored it at that particular moment of time. As a bicycle rider, frequently out at 1 a.m. with lights on and with 3 or 4 other bike riders I might see on that bike path, that is perfect. That is a perfect epilogue to a wonderful evening. It's a great way to sign off for the night.
Dude.
So, Leon, what would you say is your equivalent of that bicycle moment for you?
In a sense of connection, in a sense of a moment of like an interaction with a person out in the world, or just a moment of connection just in general in life?
Both. When for me, it's the moment the two happened at the same time. I felt, I've had this great evening. I sang all night, and I've connected with everybody, and now it's quiet. I'm getting my recharge time, and yet there's another person out there who's, in a similar position as me, in that calm, and there's that moment of sharing or connection, but there's also a sense of connecting to the entire world.
I feel like maybe I'm just not a good enough person to have such a lovely sense of peace and connection. No, I'm exaggerating.
No, it's something
Nicole
that.
and I, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh no, and it's this this description, the thing that we're talking about right now. For me, I find very few people have talked about it. So I've really put you on the spot because it's
No,
this
no, I love it.
unique
I love it.
thing.
I like the question because I know like that exists. Where has it existed in this week, let's say, even if in a microcosm? Actually, I can tell you when. Nicole and I every Saturday. So right now I'm I do not, I guess I shouldn't reveal to all my many fans that I don't make all my money from the streams I get on Spotify. But I still have a job and work. And I love it, but it is a job. And lately it's pretty full, busy type of scene. So Saturday I'm off. So every Saturday, Nicole and I are we going to go to the beach or not? That's our question. I don't know why. Why is it every week? Are we going to basically watch TV and order food and relax and like sit around and drink tea and too much coffee and just do whatever here? Am I going to make songs in the back? Or are we going to the beach? Because it's a bit of a drive and there's traffic and it's like once you're there, and like that's the day. And so it's always, or am I going to work on that guy's song? Maybe. And then, so we finally got to the beach a week ago. Not this, right? Not today or yesterday, but last week. And then we went again this week. And the second time, this past Friday, I feel like we dropped into the zone immediately. And we were sitting there just kind of looking at this sea otter. Nicole was loving him. He would just bob his head up and then bob back down. And there were a few other people there looking. This other couple, like kind of down the way, and on the actual sand, older couple. And then they were like looking at the sea otter, and then looking up at us, seeing that we were. And then they just kept looking. I guess it was a little much, but it was also kind of nice. We're all just sort of sitting there, and like this one, and it takes forever. You would just bob up, float upside down for 5 seconds, and then he was gone. And then you're just waiting for the next time, and just toned everything way down. The tempo of everything just spaces way far out. I don't tend to get to that state a lot. I love that state a lot, but it's challenging for me to get there. I'm go go go. Nicole, instant relaxation. She's on the beach. She's got a drink. She's having a good time. Me, I need to kind of get that zone and kind of spread it out. But I found it.
I know what you're
this
talking
past
about.
Friday. Exactly.
That's it. It's I'm thinking about that experience, and yeah, that moment. I guess it's really about when, like you said, the tempo of everything is different, right? And if you're a hyper busy, hyper thinking, hypercritical, judgy kind of person, like I certainly am, transitioning and just being present is like not my natural state. I wake up in the morning, and I go.
Good.
And
Time to get to it.
I that boom, I got my energy, I got my recharge, and I'm going to spin my battery. This last week I've been getting up at 6 a.m. and going till about noon, just gangbusters on everything I can. Then have a little dip in the afternoon, take a little break, and then, by 5 o'clock, gangbusters again. And then, so I was saying earlier, I think in the previous take that talking about foot massage, that was a thing I could do that would ground me, because now I'm not in charge. I'm just laying there. My feet are in a hot tub of water. Someone else is going to take care of me for the next 60 minutes. And so that's one technique I use. But I could do this at home. I could stick my feet in the bathtub. I can massage my feet. It ain't going to happen. I'm going to be working on that next project, the next song, or the next website, or talking with a client. Even though I have resources here, it's like I have to be elsewhere to step away from that work mindset. And that sea otter, when he was popping up his head, it's like that focal point, right? And now you got to wait. And you can choose to just walk away and say, oh, that was a cute otter, whatnot. But you chose to stay engaged with that experience.
I didn't choose anything. Nicole was there, and she was like, "You're not going anywhere." And
Oh,
finally,
I see. You have a guy.
yeah. No, I would have been gone. Like, see you. Good to see you. There it is.
What are you doing? I'll put you in my next song. Give me a call.
But she kept me there. She was feeling real sweet. Nicole is amazing. And then I did get into the zone, and it was beautiful. It was a great night.
Nice. And by the way, is she operating the camera in the room with you right now?
She is finally cashed out, and she's like, I'm sitting down now, and she's like laying out.
Okay.
But she has been here.
I was going to say we should have her come on camera.
Well, she's in her PJs. I'm not 100% sure that Nicole's ready. She just said no like this.
No, I'm behind the camera. Yeah, my wife, she will not step in front of the camera. She's like, I'll click. You set everything up. I'll click the picture.
I'll click.
I'll hold the camera. We took some video of me in my car that I just sold, and I wanted to get some video before I sold it and put it in a music video, of course. I can't get rid of my car until the music video is shot. Yeah. So
you got rid of your sports car.
Yes. After 7 years.
What did you do? What? This is the opposite of like the midlife crisis. This is like, I'm going to get rid of my sports car. This is this is not good. This is not good.
Well, the person who was my girlfriend, now my wife, about a year and a half ago, asked me to go on vacation in Canada. And I said, why would you go to Canada? It's cold there. And she said, yeah, I want to go up in August to walk on a glacier.
Oh.
And being from the San Francisco Bay Area, I'm all about the warmth, the heat. And she is about the cold. And she said, well, I'm going to do it one way or the other if you want to go or not. I thought, okay, how often do you get to walk on a glacier? And we were up there, and everybody was so relaxed. I'm like, okay. And then we're like in town in the city where the oil in Calgary where the oil business is, and you think, okay, that's more tense. We went in a grocery store and it still felt relaxed, and I'm like, oh, right, right. And I thought, what is this feeling? And my brain said, it's called the lack of fear. And I thought, oh, okay. So we were having dinner, and I said, our relationship has really gotten serious, and we should be thinking about what we want to do. And I was going to my whole project management mode. I think, planning, got to plan, control. And Kat was out of the bag. A couple of weeks later, she's like, "Okay, I've plotted out everything. We can't move to Canada because of da 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 da. And, but we can move to Seattle. Let's do that. I've started looking. Here's a list of 10 places for you to look at to give me feedback." Okay. So I've been in this transition of coming up to Seattle. We thought it would take about a year and a half. And my parents are still in the Bay Area. And I thought, well, I'll fly back and forth. And all these plans that with COVID just went poof. And during this time over the winter, she has a Mazda 6, which is a fairly larger vehicle, 4-door sedan. And I've got RX-8 sports car. And she went sliding through a stop sign. And I went, let's say, I heavily drifted on a corner. And we were comparing notes, and we're like, oh, that's why everybody has a 4-wheel vehicle up here. And we see everybody in 4-wheel Subarus and whatnot.
Totally.
Oh, I get it. 9 months of the year it is cold, and 3 months of the year it is frozen. So, yeah, and so it was time. So we got a CX-30, which is a sporty CrossFit. I don't know. It's like somewhere between a sporty but an SUV. You can put skis on top, but you don't look like you're a grandparent. And so I was like, we have 3 cars now. And I see people with 3 to 5 cars up here. And I'm like, I got to feed the music, right? So there's only so many vehicles you could have. So it was time to give up the sports car.
I hear that. Gotta do it. Gotta do it.
Yeah.
Seattle's a beautiful place. I actually love Seattle. In
Oh,
fact, the
it's
weather
gorgeous.
up there, in terms of that balance between the San Francisco vibe, weather-wise, and then the cold, it is that perfect. Like San Franciscans can be happy weather-wise in Seattle. I spent some time in Eugene, Oregon, and then I lived in Olympia very briefly. And I'd go visit some friends from music school in Seattle, and they're great, obviously. Went to visit my friend at War, and we spent some time there. It was actually great. It's the music in Seattle at some point. I mean, Seattle music wasn't just the grunge scene. It's like been a music town straight through.
It is. I'd say it's the most music town I've been in other than Nashville.
Wow.
As far as before COVID, you just everybody had a gig every night. Venues are playing. It's just everybody I met was in a band and playing. It was interesting because I started hosting Balanced Breakfast when I moved up here, and it was kind of hard at first because people didn't want to meet and just hang out, and they met in the evenings.
Right.
At gigs, and gigs where everybody's swapping off instruments and doing combo bands. The idea of kind of meeting online or meeting before the evening started seemed very foreign to them, like strong live music culture.
Yeah.
Although there's also production up here, obviously, and Sub Pop and everything that came out of that is very much a part of it. And I'm watching Seattle versus the Bay Area transition into this online space, and it's just a different culture about music.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
Music's
it's a
been-
complimentary one.
there's a huge amount of musicians in the Bay. I mean, there are a lot of musicians, a lot of great acts, a lot of great bands. I don't think you can break to national from the Bay Area. Really, just I don't think it's. You can break to international, but it's hard to get, really gain a national profile from the Bay. There's just not. I don't know. Sometimes we call it a civilian audience. Like it seems like a lot of the people who are coming to the shows are other musicians and other bands. It's just not a huge part of the way people lay back. If they do, and they do, they go to see major acts. Major acts do very well in the Bay Area. There's a huge scene for going to see real concerts. But to build, to like kind of work your way up, it is a tricky place to do it. It is a very there isn't there isn't a way to do it. People do it. People still do it. A few artists have made it from here very recently, but it's not like the '60s. It's not like the 1960s where you had like this like, mecca, like just popping off everywhere. That we don't have. I think people just
The thing a lot of people don't recognize, there's a book by Derek Silvers, who started CD Baby, called Everything You Want. And, oh no, wait. I think this might have been a different book. I read it the same weekend. It might have been like, you're in the music business, now you're screwed. Something like that. And it was like, the Mississippi. Do not do music west of the Mississippi if you want to be in the business. Because if you look at the number of universities, the number of places to gig, how close and how short amount of time it takes you to get, as soon as you get west of the Mississippi, everything spreads out. And you have a couple dense spots like LA, San Francisco Bay Area, and Seattle. But other than that, it's wide open. So I understand why Nashville is where people were playing 100 people, bands a night, are going on constantly.
Yeah,
it's a more tight or packed part of the country.
Yeah.
It's easier to get out, do stuff. The music writing business is there. The country music business is there. When you go to
interesting because the musicians tend to be very progressive as a whole, artists as a whole, but those are the red states. Very interesting dichotomy the way it works out.
Well, I think anytime you have one culture, whatever label you want to put on it, there's a rebellion against that.
That's deep what you're saying.
And the music scene kind of provides that
one
way or the other. The San Francisco Bay Area, the challenge I see is that it is a place where it's so expensive you have to be working.
No, you work all the time. I didn't grow up. I grew up in the city. I grew up in the Mission District.
Okay.
And then I moved in I split my time between my parents, part of the time in the Avenues and part in the Mission District. And, it wasn't that. When I was 18, just kind of coming to freedom and awareness as a young dude in the city, everyone worked part-time. And there was always some event, and all you had to do was slap a flyer or just like tell somebody. And they were like, oh, an event? A show? And then here we are at that thing. It's packed. Every show packed everywhere. It was just, everyone had time. I don't know that the culture's really changed. I think people don't have time. I think it's just like the real estate as the basis of the economy. It's just like, just took it all. It just takes anything and just like absorbs it. All culture, all life, just, pay your rent, and then we can talk about that. And that's, obviously true for living, but let's talk about the small businesses and the like venues or anything, even just like, I used to complain about the techies, but you know what? The fact is they're in the same sport, working 12, 13-hour day, getting calls from their boss, or, if they're on a project international, they're catching a call at like 2 a.m. It's like, there's no like go to shows. So this isn't a great place to build, but I moved back here after living in New York and traveling because I just missed it so much. I love these streets, So yeah.
And if you were born and raised, San Francisco is One of the great cities, and I'm so grateful in my life that I had it in my backyard. I grew up in the South Bay,
No.
and San Francisco was, and to some degree Berkeley and Oakland were places where I could get away and play, and there was live entertainment and shows to go to, and I watched that get more and more difficult through 80s, 90s, 2000s as the South of Market area became gentrified, and so you had less clubs, less community shops and stuff. So going out of business because they were just priced out of it. But I'm curious how COVID is in some ways changing that. On one hand, it's sort of increased the death march that has been happening for the last 30 years in San Francisco, but at the same time, it's also impacting the tech world, who are really the leaders of that encroachment into San Francisco. So I'm wondering how that's
I
playing
feel like
out.
the leaders are the. I don't know that they're the leaders. They
Yeah.
often buy land that's pretty remote. No, I mean, Facebook. Nobody was living where Facebook is. I mean, we all like talk shit about Facebook, but then why are we on it so much? I love Facebook, but no, I wouldn't say I love it. But I use it a lot. It's pretty a high utility, but they're remote. I feel like really it's just that there is a key moment, and San Francisco is the leader for the rest of the Bay Area. And that moment, I'm gonna show my personal opinions, and they're only opinions, and I'm willing to change them on a dime. I don't know anything, but just the thought that there was a moment when we could have taken control of it through legislation about what you can and can't do with whether you're renting a commercial or rental to live space. We decided we are going to let it go just hog wild capitalism. And that destroys culture. It destroys the environment. It eats everything.
Well, the neighborhoods go.
Yeah, I mean, the black community in San Francisco at one point was like 12%, 13%. I mean, it's just like down, dwindling down. The story of San Francisco is heroic and sad, because so many great things could have just not, so many good things could have been done. Mayor Brown, Willie Brown was just handed San Francisco to the landlords, and and they felt like it's our city, we own it, we do what we rule this city. And I'm showing my. It's funny. I actually am not like seething with any kind of anger, but when I even talk about it now, I'm actually kind of annoyed again. But yeah, that was the time to do something about it. And at the point that it was like past that time, it's just business. It's just how it is now. So I kind of have accepted it. But at the time, that was the time to do something about it. Now, people who paid $2 million for this shack, they're not going to let their profit margin go. Who knows where they live in the world? They're probably not. They don't live there. They're part of some conglomerate that owns. This is one of the pieces in their portfolio. They're fine to just sit on it. So I don't see it going down anytime soon.
Okay.
I hope it
I
does.
was kind of thinking that with, the push was San Francisco, when I started going to San Francisco, was this incredibly diverse, neighborhood-based communities have lived there for a long time, of all ages, shapes, and sizes. And the last time I was in the city, I was like, wow, everybody here is 20 to 35, hanging out at the beer garden and the foodie pubs and whatnot. And I just didn't see all those generations of the 20-year-old to the 90-year-old. And so it was like a reduction in diversification of age that I was seeing. And
Wow.
I was thinking, well, okay, this has become the party place. This is where, it's not suburban, it's not quiet, it's not go home and watch TV. It's I go out after work. You go out, like maybe in New York or certainly in Paris and Barcelona, you're out in the evening. And so the whole point of being in San Francisco is to be able to go out and suddenly everything's closed. And suddenly you're working from home, so you don't even have to go to the massive towers that have gone up. And you're thinking, well, I could do this in Millbrae and save a lot of money.
Exactly. You know.
So,
And thus began the great the great migration to the east and to the north of the artistic culture, the arts and entertainment community, through Oakland, Vallejo, and then headed to points north and east. Almost like the gentrification was a dress rehearsal for the COVID thing. But now COVID has usurped gentrification in a strange way. Because you see, like Twitter, for example, Twitter's looking for roommates to share their tower because they can't afford to stay there. Pinterest paid about $98 million to get out of their lease of the tower because everybody's working from home anyway. That was at Pinterest, their employees. And Pinterest is saying, look at all the money we're saving. Everybody's working from home. Why are we shelling out money for a tower we can't fill with employees? So, and that's just part of it, of course.
that's an interesting point about the vacancy, corporate vacancy result. I think that the certainly ever since I've been going to San Francisco, and since I'd say the early to mid '90s, the migration has been out of San Francisco to Oakland. In the 80s, when you went to Soma, there were all these gallery shows, and I remember seeing Mark Pauline of Survival Research Laboratories doing his own solo show right there, like 8th and Mission. And, you know, this is a man who blew off his own hand doing his art because his art is so dangerous. So there was a real edge and a creative edge in Soma, and I watched that go as, you know, certain things weren't allowed. As SRL performed on the streets in Soma, firing a cannon of fluorescent tubes. You know, it was very industrial strip, and once that neighborhood got more apartment complexes, got a Whole Foods, etc. Probably by the early '90s, it seemed like everybody was going to Oakland because you could still do something like that in Oakland, in South Oakland, High Street, that area. You know, there were all these industrial warehouses where people were doing industrial art. So I think that tendency and that wave to move east, or maybe go out into the Central Valley or even to Colorado and disperse, has been there for some time. And I think the big tech companies, and to what Leon's saying, the real estate folks put those two pressures on the city, on the artist, and the condition was to go. And I was thinking more from the tech standpoint, like you were, Joe, about these towers that are empty and companies that want to spend the money. What's that going to do long run? When this is all over, who's going to move back in there? And will that change anything, or will it just be the companies moving back in? But Leon, you were saying that you think that there's so much value in San Francisco that
I just think that
they'll just hold on to
it's
it.
just, you know, listen, if people would have to really see the numbers fall before they start jumping ship. I just feel like if it dips, you know, they're not going to jump ship. It would have to really start to tank and look bad for people to get spooked, because there's no people. It's just like megacorp. I mean, I don't think most of these places are getting bought up by some random person. I think mostly they're people in their portfolio, and somebody manages it, so there's a bit of detachment. So I think they have the money to wait it out. They're willing to wait it out, and also the amount that they lose if they didn't wait it out. But also the prices haven't dipped; they've gone up. So, you know, people still want to
Okay.
live here. You know, they figure, well, it'll end. You know, it'll end eventually. I do think it'll end. I mean, initially the home shelter was supposed to slow the speed of the infections so that the hospitals are not overwhelmed. That's evolved to something more permanent without ever really going out and saying it. We haven't been given a clear, like, well, this is why we're going to still stay in shelter, because it's not about slowing it anymore. It feels like So, but it's still dangerous. Let's not downplay it. But it's hard to know where it goes and how it twists. You're not going to wait for a vaccine. That's not how science works. They're not coming up with a vaccine. It's not coming. That's not happening in a year. It's not happening in 2 years. It'll happen in 5 or 6 years. That's my random thought, and I'm willing to be so wrong. I hope I'm wrong.
I hope you're wrong too.
I don't know if the vaccine thing will be it. I hope that it's just like a treatment protocol. Like,
well, that's certainly
the heavy duty, big time cats seem to be fine when they get COVID. That's the other side of it. Trump and all those guys got COVID. They seem all right. Well, they got some medicine that's working. It's probably just really expensive, and they're just not going to let those guys die. Sadly.
It will be an interesting thing to watch over the next, say, 2 more weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
the other
side, I think a lot of conversations are going to shift around that. Yeah, I worked for a vaccine company for a time, and I'd say it was usually 1.5 to 2 years as a cycle, and. But as you say, you can come up with a lot of other treatment regimens in the meantime, anti-inflammatories and steroids and whatnot to be aggressive with it. And then it becomes a price versus what the insurance is willing to pay for balance and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I wanted to put a shout out, since I'm talking from Seattle, and we've been talking about a lot of SF. When I first came up here, there was the real challenge that for decades it had been a big small town, and the gentrification wasn't so bad. And it definitely up here, there's a hostility around tech in Seattle proper with Google and Amazon, because it felt like everybody, like all the prices skyrocketed. The infrastructure for traffic wasn't here, so it's just bumper to bumper traffic, and all the clubs were being forced to shut down because the real estate owners didn't want to deal with a club. They'd rather throw in another tech giant or biotech giant. And so there was a real hostility in the music scene toward all these new interlopers, Californians like myself. And so I was going to these committee meetings and gatherings of how do we resolve this, and I'm forgetting his name right now. Is it Cal? I don't know. Anyhow, guy who grew up in the 90s in the grunge scene and whatnot had become the head of the county, and so he was doing everything he could to find ways to hold on to the venues, like declaring them historical monuments, which was working. And so they were going through that. When I came up here, I realized that they were going through this like identity trauma. And so I have no sense of like what this wing has thrown at it. But I agree with you that this is a long haul situation, one way or the other. And at the same time, there's going to be this sort of realization that as a long haul, the current situation can't stand. So you're going to have people saying, okay, take more risk, and we're going to accept sort of parsing out the impact of this. Now, we got really far out in the weeds. I don't know if anybody's listening to us yet still, because we got really out in the weeds, and I don't really go, there's 3 people. So I'm going to play a video to break things up. Thank you for sticking around, everybody who's been listening to the show. And we're going to show you another video by Leon Rosen, and then we'll come back and have our wrap-up chat.
Fade against the breeze, fade against the breeze, 'cause of what I've heard is our destiny. Oh, and I roll in the river, 'cause I'm weakest at the knees. Call it what you will.
That was Swing With Me by Leon Rosen. So what is your next? That's 6 years ago. What's the name of your next single or next album that you're going to be putting out?
Well, that's a good question. I have some things ready in the works. I have a music video in production right now for what I think is my next best song after Grieving Friend. And maybe it'll top it. So far, nothing has been able to top. Nothing's knocked that one out yet. In terms of people who have been following and like my stuff, I keep getting a request to do more Grieving Friend style stuff. And so this song is not going to be my very next song.
I was going to say that's the challenge of anybody who finally gets a hit. You're like,
Get
oh, I want
one.
a song to be popular. You finally get a song that's popular, and then you have to bear the fact that everybody just wants more of that.
Exactly. So the truth is, I don't mind doing more of that stuff because I actually really like it. And I've been trying to research, just asking the people who like it and asking the engineers that worked on it and the musicians, like, what was it about that? What were the elements in that? So the fact is, I do have a couple songs coming down the pipeline. I'm probably going to release. Actually, finished "Swing With Me" as a band song, and I'm pretty happy with it. Although it might need a few tweaks. We might need to mess. We might just release it as it is and just say, listen, it's the next song is not perfect, but it's good, pretty good. But then after that would probably be Wild Canopies, which is the name of the song with the music video. And then I would love to get to work on an album that was in the style of Grieving Friend. Truth be told, no part of me is against that. I love that style. I just need to revisit what it was that made that, because it was part of an EP. And I don't really know why that one came out so well and the rest of the EP is cool. It's okay. It's great. But that one really stands out. So I just need to think about, well, what synthesizer did we use? Like, is it the textures? Is it about making an album that has that feel and maybe a bit more upbeat? It's not a fast song, but it has some fast parts. I don't know. I'm giving some thought to it. Part of it was the way we have the drums roll. It was a beat, but there was jazz aspects, a lot of turning the beat around, a lot of rides and sort of peripheral rhythmic sort of events happening that you usually see in jazz, counter rhythms. But then this driving beat down the center. And then these dark synths and pure synths, just like, ha. And then the lyric, keeping it kind of subdued until it was time to pop. That might be it. Maybe I'm going to go and revisit this video later and write all that down, and then that'll be the album.
I think it has that subdued, and then it pops and raises, and it has that energy. And obviously for me, I hadn't heard it before I saw the music video. So to me, the music video and the song are one, and right. the two together, each one is really good, and the two together fit so well together that then it takes both the video and the song to the next level. And that's definitely a component. And sometimes you just can't guess. With two of my band projects, well, all three of them. So Audio Terrorist is the one I started in high school. Cui Bleu was the one I did after 9/11, sort of retitled Audio Terrorist Cui Bleu for a little while, but then it branched off and did its own thing, and Audio Terrorist got rebooted. And then the Caleb stuff. So those are my three projects, and so we got a kind of artsy electronic that then grew into maybe goth industrial, and then we had Cui Bleu, which was kind of like electronic, sexy electronic, dark wave, and then Caleb, which is kind of country, rock, folk influenced. And in all three cases, right now, the number one song for all three bands is not the number one song for the bands 10 years ago. So the songs I said, okay, that's the winner's song. Plug your ears, people. This is a naughty phrase. But Stupid Bitch just became the top seller for Audio Terrorist and for like good 10 years. And I was like, oh, why that song? It was a slap together. I took 2 takes. I was just pissed off, and it was a throwaway track. but it had a naughty name, so that's what everybody bought. And that has now been replaced by another naughty word, come here, genderfuck, which I did in the early 90s when I was studying gender and da-da-da-da and the art school and all this stuff. And that's what it meant to me. But now gender is a bigger topic in our culture. So now that song is getting put on Spotify playlists. And maybe because the previously titled song, even though it had an outrageous name, so therefore people were grabbing it, now that's a name that nobody wants to be associated. So boom, sales of that go down, sales of the other one go up. And literally the only reason why these two songs are going up and down is the title. And I'm watching culture react to something that says, something that might be now perceived as negative towards women, which it actually wasn't intended to be. And then I did a later version called Sexy Bitch to try to tame it down, and some friends said that didn't make it any better. But gender and gender fluidity discussion has gone up, so therefore that song. So sometimes the song rides on the waves of the culture below it. And then with Cuir Bleu, again, naughty title, Sex Toy. Okay, that was number one for that band for 10 years, outsold everything. And then 2 or 3, maybe 2 years ago, a track called Pleasure and Pain just took off. That's 15 years after it was released, somewhere around there. It's taken off, and it's done 1,000 times what that band ever did in any other song. And here's the kicker. It wasn't as a single. It's not a single. It's an album track. And it's an album track that in my mind is broken. And that is that it's a muddy, it's just a drum loop with vocals on top. There's not much to it. It's just one drum loop for 3 minutes with a female singer singing on top. And I couldn't get it polished for the final release. And then we went to do the master, and one of the channels turned out was corrupted. And we were so ready for release, and I was so done with it. I literally took the left channel that had no data errors and duplicated it. So it's mono.
Wow.
So you have this mono album track that's kind of a throwaway. Now the vocals are really cool, and the concepts of the lyric is really cool, but it's one of those more of a mood concept pieces than what you would think is a single. But guess what? Boom, number one the last couple of years. And Sex Toy is still, number 2, but it's a much more commercial song and whatnot. Caleb, I released a song called Wizard on the Stairs that I thought was the most commercial thing I ever did in my life. And it did nothing. And the B-side, which was some library, it was like an MP3 library track that I found this guy did. And all of a sudden these lyrics came out, and I just improvised again, I think maybe 1 or 2 takes. And just said, that'll be the B-side. Here comes the check for $500. It's been synced 3 million times on someone's video on YouTube.
Wow.
So you just don't
Script,
know.
you don't know what sticks. When it comes to tunes, sometimes we'll feel like, wow, I remember how I felt when I got a tune really mixed, like pro and clean. And I thought, this is going to be huge. And here's the thing. That's what everybody's used to. That's the norm. So there's nothing to say about it. It's like not that exciting in the world of that kind of thing. So once you do something that's that clean, you enter the world of that level of clean. And then it matters if it's got something sticky on top, something to make it stick in the ear. Does it hang on to people? Do they want to replay it? And we don't know why something hits sometimes, man. A good mono loop that people are feeling, and it's just like the right loop and the right level of who knows? Grieving Friend, maybe the fact that it has Grieving Friend of a Superman, maybe it was just like that. It's a long enough title to catch the attention, or Superman is in it, or Friend is in it,
And for me, it was, if it said Grieving for a Friend, I'd go, oh, that's a dime a dozen. Everybody's written a Grieving for a Friend song. But Grieving for a Friend of a Superman, let's see. Grieving friend of a Superman. That to me was like literary. And I was like, "Whoa, what's that about?" Immediately got my
So yeah,
attention.
you're saying something interesting about the way I used to write versus the way I ended up writing. I ended up deciding I need to like tone it down. I need to like stop making every song have 27 chord changes and try to just have a section where there's some exciting moments. And still, it's a million times more chord changes than you usually are going to hear. But lately, I've been feeling, based on the popularity of that song, and it's about on par with my other song, Then Again, which is more obviously overtly commercial, although the beat, maybe we didn't nail the beat on the verse. But still, it's a lot more. But that one has gotten because of playlists, and Grieving Friend just got traffic. Most people listen because they saved it, and the other one, most people listen because I got on a bunch of playlists. I promoted it, I saved dough, I put dough into that song, it got on a bunch of playlists, and it's still running. They're about equal in listenership, but honestly, Grieving Friend is the one that people are actually just want to listen to. So I think a big part of it is the literary aspect, to not shy away from just go there. Go prog. I don't ever go fully prog. My stuff is always still trying to tell a story that can be heard by everybody. The grieving song of a friend of a Superman was just that's what it was. It was a grieving friend of a Superman, and so that was what the song was called, and that's what the lyrics were, and there was no trying to make a contrivance or anything. So it's funny to think about that. I mean, if I tried to make a bunch more, it would probably come out really flat. Well, you never know. Radiohead hates the song "Creep." They can't stand it. I read that not long ago. Like
Yeah, yeah.
they eventually decided to start performing it again because it had been so long that they no longer hated it.
And they
And
could always they're so progressive in their timings and chord progressions and whatnot. They could always
Right.
just adapt it to who they became now
Right.
and
That's right.
perform it as a less pop song and whatnot. But that's an interesting thing with them because I heard that song. Oh, this is good radio hit. Da-da. And then someone gave me an album, a couple albums after that or something, and I literally could not listen to it. And that's when everybody started raving about them to me. And I'm like, this for me is just not listenable music because it was so abstract, which is interesting because I love pop and then I love like movie soundtracks, which can be quite abstract. But somehow this just sat somewhere in this uncanny valley for me. It wasn't one and it wasn't the other, but that's what made them endeared to their their fan base. You know, they was like they are different. They don't sit in either end, and they're sitting in this middle spot, and that's why I cherish them so much. So you just never know what the fan base is going to get out of that. But I would say that most of these people, if they hadn't heard Creep, wouldn't have probably opened the door.
They wouldn't have even given them a shot. They would have not got, like the Beatles. They didn't start with Sgt. Pepper. They didn't start with Fool on the Hill. They certainly didn't start with Your Mother Should Know.
Yeah.
They started with, I Want to Hold Your Hand. And
Right.
it's just like, so that's what I've been thinking about. Like, you know what? I'm not ready to cash in the chips, dog. I'm about to make it. I'm making this happen. One way it'll take everything I've got and then some, and luck, and who knows, but I'm not cashing in chips. I'm going to make songs like I want, as close as I, the grand weirdo, can get. I don't actually like the word weird that much. In fact, somebody offered to put my newest song on a playlist, and she wrote to me, obviously, I don't have to tell you this song is weird. And I'm a pop off at the mouth kind of guy. And I reacted. I was like, yeah, you're not putting my song in your playlist. Because I have a pet peeve about that word. I was like, you know what? And then she was like, I'll get back to you. Don't get back to me. Just don't put it on your playlist. Number 800 on your playlist where I get one stream. Forget you. Get lost. So I don't mean to be so rude sounding now. But I was just like, don't call me weird. But I can call me.
Yeah. I'm having you on the show as you. I don't. I don't have anybody on this show and say, could you please be somebody else? That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, exactly.
For me, I'm learning people. I start off with friends and then friends of friends, and it's for me an opportunity to get me. In some ways, now that I think about it, listening to music again, because I'd stopped listening to music a couple years ago. I'd listen to maybe a few albums, a handful of albums that I know when I wanted to motivate to do the laundry or something. But after a whole life of listening to music, like 24/7, I've just burnt out on discovering new music or anything. And And I'm finding with the show, it's opening me up again to artists, and getting to meet you and the other 20 some artists I've had on the show.
I like that. I like you just decide I'm not going to listen to music anymore. I'm to discover it. Do you have Spotify? You do, for sure.
I'm on Spotify. I have Spotify for Artists set up, and I go up there and tinker around a little. But I never go to it. I go to YouTube for 90% of everything I do. Music. I finally actually bought a subscription because it's where I go to watch TV. It's where to go listen to music. YouTube and
I think
Facebook
that's the
are
majority
my
of
world.
people in the world. It's YouTube. That's the stat that I read. Spotify is huge, but it doesn't even come close to YouTube. YouTube, there's just no way to, you can't monetize it all from the streams, really. But unless they've changed it, I believe it's 0.00001.
You're talking about
4
YouTube?
zeros and then 1.
I've
4
gotten
weddings and a funeral.
I've gotten more payments off of YouTube. Well, I've had more come in money wise on YouTube than Spotify.
Oh wow.
But again,
They
that's
might have
because
changed it once they started restricting the smaller accounts from monetizing. They may have like joined the world of like a semi-legitimate payoff to people who are creators. And then earlier on, it was great. But I know that, I don't know. I'm not 100%, but I remember
the challenge
reading
I have
4
with
zeros.
The challenge with YouTube is that it became a television broadcasting service, etc. And then a couple of years ago, they recognized that and they changed the standard. So it used to be that everybody who was on YouTube could become an artist and build following and had access to all the features. And then they implemented the 1,000 views a week rule or whatever that standard is that I don't think I will ever hit. And that created a 3-tier community: the viewers, casual viewers, and then the artists who are doing stuff but aren't the top talents. And then there's this, the top tier of people who started back then and had time to build up, but to build up to their level now is kind of a glass ceiling. I think that's the challenge with YouTube. And I think some of my music got picked up by some people who are on the other side of that glass ceiling, and that's why the money came in. CD Baby does not, they only know it came from YouTube, and YouTube won't tell you because they don't know, apparently. I'm like, well, and so I don't actually know where that got played. I did searches on the song title and tried to find it. So I have no idea where that song became the soundtrack of. But obviously it was some commercial that, played several million times.
Sounds great. Can't beat that.
Well, we are having a great time talking, and I think we should meet up and have another episode in the coming year and do a check-in on your work.
I would love to. I'd be happy to. It was quite a nice time on my end.
Cool. I'm now hungry, and I'm
Me too. Yeah.
We had an extra long show today because we did the episode twice, and I need to go back and do some editing and whatnot. So it has been a pleasure, Leon. Thank you for diving in and taking the golden ticket and going on this ride with Joe and I. Joe has been particularly quiet but profound this episode. Always.
Joe nailed it. A few heavy hitters. It was like slammo.
You're like, it's just us talking. You're like, only two people. All of a sudden, there's this third, the voice of God comes in. Boom.
Right. Yeah, this episode was so good. We had to do it twice to make sure it wasn't an accident.
No, that's right. The thing that you said is sticking with me, that to write from the heart and edit from the head, man, I am hanging on to that. And I'll tell you why I'm hanging on to that. And I know we're trying to wrap up and eat, but let me tell you why I'm hanging on to that. Why I feel it's valuable. Because there's stuff I'll do, stuff we'll all do in the creative process, or creative people that, determine where our energy is going to go. And I know that I put a lot of energy into stuff that's going nowhere. It's just like self-sustaining engine of today that keeps me going to think that, oh yeah, I'll do this, and then it turns out to peter out on creative projects, not life. But when it comes to finding the thing that's got the heart already and staying with that, the need to create from the heart, but then having the guts to stick with the head on it until it's right.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's the reason that even extroverts like us will slip into the portal of the introverse and have that quiet time whereupon we can write from the heart and then edit from the head. You get the viewpoints of the extroverse and the introverse, and that portal in between becomes a busy thoroughfare. We get a doubles our perspective around people and within ourselves.
It's deep. And then the last thing I want to add, just also about the extrovert introvert thing, it's based on like in chatting with you guys, is a huge difference for sometimes people who are extroverts, but with the right people. When the conversation is happening and the response is alive and you leave and just like, damn, that was on fire. Ideas, stimulation. Because sometimes that boredom aspect hits where it's just like somebody didn't just like sucker punch me with an idea and it's just like open up my mind to something new. So sometimes, yeah.
Fertile ground versus barren ground.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, this has been very fertile ground tonight, and I thank both of you for joining. For guests that are out there watching, we appreciate you tuning into the show. If tonight was your first night, tune in next week. We'll be back. If you tuned in again, I thank you for your patronage. And I'm going to say goodnight to our guests, Joe and Leon Rosen. We will catch you in a future episode.
Leon, it's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure too.
I'm waiting for Zoom to flip over to Leon. Leon, speak up so Zoom flips you.
Thank you guys. It's been great. It's been a really nice time hanging with you, and I very much look forward to next time.
Yes, sir. Good night. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Yeah. That was our interview with Leon Rosen here on Sunday Live with Caleb. Thank you, folks, for watching the show. I hope it was informative about how artists think about their work and our sort of inner workings of how we spend our time to develop the creative product that we develop that you all get to be entertained by. On that note, I'm going to go entertain some late night snacks. Have a great one. See you next week. If you'd like to find out more about my work, you can follow me on Facebook, Caleb Duart, or go check out my Bandcamp, Caleb, Auditerist, or Qui Bleu, all on Bandcamp and YouTube.